A warm welcome to Thriving in Christ show on podcast and YouTube. This is an episode on renewal conversations, and I'm so delighted to have Michelle McCoy in this interview today. Michelle is a high functioning fatigue expert. She's board certified holistic and functional health coach and host of the Treasure Wellness Christian podcast. And she helps driven Christian leaders in midlife to break free from their high functioning fatigue and feeling energized. And she uses individualized, targeted support combined with renewal biblical mindset shifts. How wonderful, right? Taking care of the body and at the same time taking care of our spirit through the biblical mindset shifts. And she teaches women to treasure their temple, their body, in a way that fits their lifestyle for a life of wellness. God called Michelle to pursue holistic health when conventional medicine failed her sick daughter. And on top of that, later, she was living a health crisis herself. And that brought her even closer to her purpose. So she learned to turn to the one, to God, who created her for healing and restoration from autoimmunity and fatigue conditions. And on a personal note, Michelle is happily married to her best friend of 32 years. They have 2 adult children, their spouses, and 3 grand dogs. Michelle and her husband are currently thriving during this phase of living in an empty nest. And if you're a regular, I want to welcome you back. And if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Yuwana Popa from Team for the Soul. And I want to welcome you on the show, Thriving in Christ, as I mentioned, on podcast and YouTube. This is for Christian women professionals who want holistic self-care habits to thrive in Christ for the kingdom. And this is really for you if you are successful and doing really well, but at times you feel stressed and depleted on a busy treadmill with Sunday night blues in spite of loving what you do. And you might even struggle to find time to take care of yourself and sustain your high level habits, although you are trying. It's not of lack of effort, it's just sometimes lack of time. Or you experience blocks in achieving your highest potential for the kingdom, although you have big dreams in Christ. If this is you, welcome. In this show, I provide you with practical tips to help you balance and align your body, your mind, your heart, meaning emotions, and your soul as you lead and serve in your vocation, in your family, your church, community, and beyond. And I have tips also how to simplify your empowering daily habits from inside out so that you can perform at your best every day, no matter your life. And I invite guests in this show, like I'm doing today, to give you tips around regenerating body, mind, heart, or soul. Because I want you to tap into your God-given confidence and vision for life in order to thrive for the kingdom and serve others with peace, that peace that surpasses all understanding, with joy, with balance. And I love to use tips from science, psychology, spiritual care, and Christian faith as I'm trained across disciplines as a physician, as a psychiatrist, as a life and leadership life coach, as a spiritual care provider, and also I'm trained in theology. So with that, if you're ready to grow in Christ psychologically and spiritually, let's dive in. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here. I'm so excited. We met I think we know each other for almost a year. And then we also met at a conference and we connected and bonded. And we just have such a passion for Christ and a passion to serve Christian women. So I'm so delighted. And you said yes. And here we are in this renewal conversation episode. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be so much fun. And I can't wait to have you on my podcast,
Yes.
Treasured Wellness.
I am excited. And Michelle, I love always to start with a question about vocation and your journey, just because I found that it's so interesting and inspiring. We know Christian women, we talk with them, but how many times we get to hear their passion for Christ, their passion for the Lord, and what brought them to this vocation of giving and serving. So what has been your journey?
Oh, wow. Well, I feel like I've always been a nurturer. Like I've always wanted to nurture. And when I was a child, I wanted to be a nurse. And then as I got older, I still wanted to be a nurse, but I also wanted to be a teacher. And I wasn't sure which one I wanted more. So still, both vocations are pouring in. And I just love that so much. And so really what brought me to holistic health, functional health, really we have to go back 21 years ago. And that's when our daughter was very, very sick. So she was between the ages of 6 and really 5 and 8 and a half, really, that she was so sick, and nobody could figure out what was wrong with her. So she was having daily headaches, chronic migraines 3 or 4 times a week, and she had a lot of skin conditions. And we did all the testing. We did everything that honestly conventional medicine knows how to do. But they failed us and they failed her. So we looked outside of conventional medicine, and I go into more detail on the podcast. And I don't hate on conventional medicine because it has its place, absolutely. If I break my arm, I'm going to a doctor. If I have a heart attack, I'm going to go to the ER.
Right.
But they don't know what they don't know, and they were looking at her one part of the problem. They were looking at her brain. They were looking at her head because that's where the pain was coming from. They didn't look at her as a whole person. They were not looking at putting all the pieces together and coming up with the body, right? So I literally had to leave the state and find a holistic practitioner that knew exactly what was wrong with her. And so then we took the process. It was a long process of kind of restoring her back to health. And, it turned out, just in case your listeners are wondering, she had a gluten allergy, which is something that is so more prevalent now today. More people know about it today. But I can tell you, in talking with other moms, they are still doing some of the same testing that they did on our daughter 21 years ago.
Wow.
So and I literally would ask, I was keeping a food diary. I was doing an elimination diet before I knew what that was. And every single doctor, the top neurology doctors, everybody said, feed this little girl whatever she wants. She doesn't feel well. And that's a great sentiment. But it was poisoning her because I was giving her the wrong foods. So fast forward, we got her through that journey, and I just really kind of jumped in full force. I had to. This was before the internet. I had to do my own research. I was going to Barnes and Noble in the library, and I was making everything from scratch. So that really showed me how important food is to good health in the body. Like, food can be medicine or poison. I forget who said that, but it's very, very true. It can be medicine or poison. And I was essentially poisoning her unbeknownst to me. So through that process, I was also going through what I'll call my first health crisis that I had my own, where, just doing all that we could to get to the bottom of her illness. I was having my own migraines, my own fatigue issues, gut issues. I was in my early 30s, and I felt like I am way too young to be so tired.
Yes.
And I was just really struggling. I was having heart palpitations, saw a cardiologist, ruled everything out. Everything was fine. Fine. Let me use my air quotes. And, I started to feel like it was me. It was all in my head. But
Mhm.
I knew it wasn't anxiety. Like, I knew. And, God is so amazing, like how he brings us kind of, full circle. At that time, I was entertaining a career switch from teaching little kids into something else. I was kind of burning out, you might say, a little bit over that. And so he brought me to nutrition school, and he called me into integrative holistic nutrition. And everything made sense. Everything made sense. Everything that she went through, some things that my son had gone through, things with my husband, things with my own health, it was all so clear. It all made sense. Food is so important, but it's not just food, it's lifestyle, it's stress perception. There's so many things that go into it. So I helped myself recover from my migraines, my gut issues, my joint pain, severe brain fog. Brain fog was really bad. And the fatigue, of course. Lost 20 pounds. Like, I just felt like a new person, like a whole new person. And so once I left nutrition school, I started helping moms with sick kids because I still had a great passion for that.
Mhm.
Because as a teacher,
Right.
I could look at children and I would be like, ooh, food allergy. Like, I could spot it. and, behavioral issues and all that. And so like moms were coming to me. And so I was helping them with that. And then I started helping moms that were, themselves because they were exhausted and they're like saying the same things. I'm way too young to feel so tired.
Mm.
And so I really enjoyed that. And then as life would happen, I ended up getting more of a permanent full-time job at a weight loss clinic. And so my coaching kind of had to take a back seat because I was working like swing shifts. And so I didn't have the bandwidth anymore to really coach. So as the clients, graduated, so to speak, I just didn't, keep pursuing that. And so then I was working there for 7+ years, and that was the beginning of my second health crisis. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Yes.
it's just, and I know you understand that. I know you understand that. But when we are taking care of everybody, everything, when work is stressful, home life is stressful. Personally, we went through the 3-year fire, I call it a fiery trial, and things were just not great. And we were caretaking for a family member, and she eventually passed. And it was just, I was putting band-aids on my symptoms, even though I knew better. And this is where you and I connect so well because we both have done that. Like we know better. And yet, when you're in the thick of it, and
Right.
so it takes intentional leaning on the Lord, really, to help us get through the crisis that we're going through. And, God made me lay down. He made me physically lay down, but he made me spiritually lay down too. And so I do share a little bit more of that on the podcast. I believe it's episode 248 about that specific time. But God is showing me more and more that if we do not listen to the body that he brilliantly created when it's telling us something, he will make us lay down.
Right.
Psalm 23, he will make us lay down.
Mm.
And so partway during that time, like he had called me to start a podcast. And so I threw myself into that. And then 3 years ago, by God's direction, he told me to quit my job. And he said, coach again, it's time to coach. He said specifically to teach my people. So, that was in the middle of the 3-year fire that all that was going on. So I just kind of like was juggling a lot of balls in the air. And, it just, when your nervous system is constantly on high alert and not getting a break, you're in
Right.
that fight, flight, or freeze, right? You're just in that sympathetic state. Your body doesn't feel safe. And my body didn't feel safe. And so that was my second health crisis specifically fatigue crisis, that I helped my body recover from. And, it was so clear to me that I went through what I went through in the seasons that I went through to help the women around me. And so now I enjoy so much helping women that are also struggling with fatigue concerns, conditions. And there's so much else that goes along with that, brain fog, joint pain, not sleeping, all of that. So there's so much more, but that was a long answer to your question.
Oh, that was so beautiful and so rich. Thank you for that. And can I just pause and say, as a physician and part of the medical system, I wanted to just apologize for that sense that the medical field has failed you and your daughter. So, on behalf of that, of the medicine world, just wanted to say that I'm truly sorry that you had to go through that, and how happy I am that you did find healing. So, thank you for that.
We did. And you know what? Like I said before, we really need a blend. We need a balance between
Yeah.
conventional and holistic medicine. I was upset and frustrated for a long time because she was my little girl. But you know what? When I went to nutrition school, God opened my eyes to what they were not taught. They were not taught nutrition. They don't know what they don't know. And, they're really driven by the insurance companies and all that, and the time spent with patients and all that. And they really did what they thought was right.
Yeah. And isn't that true
Um,
for all of us that we don't know what we don't know? This is where coaching comes in, right? And it's so powerful.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So it was a journey that we had to take. I don't want anyone else to have to take 3 years to get a diagnosis. I think that's kind of much, but
Yeah. And I'm curious, as you're saying, what has been your Christian journey? Like, how do you connected with God? You want to share a bit about that? And also, you said something like, God told me I have to do the podcast or now coach. Like, that is a very beautiful insight. And for many people, this is like, how does this happen? Because they're not just one way that God speaks with us, but I find it so inspiring when we can hear from each other how we can really discern the signs and the way God connects with us so we can get that clear direction. So if you want to just tell us a bit about your journey with Christ and in God, did you always were you always a believer? How did that unfold for you and how did you get to know and hear from him directly? What's it like for you?
wow, that we have to go even further back. That's so crazy. I no, I was not always a believer. I did not grow up in a typical Christian home. Full disclosure, I was brought up Jehovah's Witness, and my mom still is a practicing Jehovah's Witness. My dad is not, though he grew up in a Christian home. So, not really sure the disconnect going on there, something I pray about every day. But I feel like I've always had some discernment in me. And it honestly wasn't until several years ago before I realized that that's what that was.
Mm,
Because I've always believed in God, but I moved out at a very young age. I moved out at 16 and I was on my own after that. I was working a full-time job, going to school. I was going to still graduate school. Like I did not have childhood experience that, some people have. So it's one of those situations where I always believed in God, but I didn't believe in the God that they were teaching.
okay. Which makes
If
sense,
that,
by the way. If I want to just pause for a second, if that's okay with you, because
sure.
many times we project onto God what we were taught or other people's images of God, and that many times that's an impediment to us even really connecting with God, and we need that discernment about that. So thank you for naming that. Yeah, and then what happened?
So fast forward, boy, you're getting all the juice, aren't you? Fast forward. I was 19 when I got married, and my husband and I had dated for 3 years. I met him shortly after I moved out of my parents' home, and we just knew that was like the next step,
Mm,
So we got married and we had our first son I was 21. And when we had him, I just knew, even before, while I was pregnant with him, I just knew that I wanted to raise him in a godly home. And
mm,
so
so
I
beautiful.
was not a believer. I know. I was not a believer at that time. Like I said, I always believed in God, but I didn't know about Jesus because I wasn't taught about
Right,
Jesus.
right.
So that just kind of started the process when he was born, and then I sent him off to preschool. I wanted him to go to a Christian preschool, and so I went to like the best preschool that was like in our area. It then became our church, and it's literally like let the little children
Mm,
tell, right? Like listen to the little children. He would come home singing preschool songs, right? Like Jesus loves me, this I know. And I was like, huh, this is what's missing in my life, right?
wow.
So I was 25 when I gave my life to the Lord. And
Wow.
then we had our daughter by that time. And so yeah, and the rest is history. Like I knew that that's what I'd been kind of missing, because it was like the God that I didn't really believe in, you know, when I moved out, like I just left that away. I didn't hold on to that. I knew even at the age of 19 that I was going to be breaking chains. I was going to be breaking generational curses, and I didn't even know what that was.
Wow, so beautiful.
So, yeah,
Thank you for
that's
sharing. That was just so moving. Yeah, appreciate that. And then as you connect and you get closer and closer with God, I mean, that question comes up often for women many times as Christian women, we doubt and we think, is this really me? What does it mean? Is it really God? Like, how do I know? And I'm
yeah.
always honored to hear how different people experience God because I truly believe that God has intimate relationship with us and the way God shows up in each and every one of our lives, it's so different and it's based on what we need, the way he created us. Our brain is diverse. We know that in science, we have neurodiversity in our brain. So how do we completely interact? For some people, maybe one way or the other. For me, is a more of a felt sense. It just feels like experientially my entire body, when I get that sense. Or other people might hear as a small voice that is talked in the Bible, or what is that for you? When you get that clarity, okay, here's the podcast. Now I need to do coaching, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, it's almost like a sense. Like I've never had a real audible voice.
Right.
Um, and a lot of people say it that way too, but it was almost like a sense. So like when I felt like God was telling me to start a podcast, I remember right where I was in my swimming pool after a really hard day at work. It was an early day, so I had time to get in the pool in the summer, and I was listening to a podcast, and I don't even remember what I was listening to. I'm sure it was something biblical because those are the podcasts I started listening to first.
Yes.
And um, I just felt this sense start a podcast.
Hmm.
And so I was like, no, I can't start a podcast. Are you kidding? Like, and so I just kind of sat on it for a little while. But that entire week, I kept thinking about it and I
Hmm.
kept going back to it. And I kept, are you sure, Lord? Was that you? Right. We
Ah,
always double check, triple check. Was that you? Are you um, prompting me to start a podcast? And I remember somebody once said, if it brings you anxiety, stress, if a thought that you think it brings you a lot of anxiety and stress, then it's probably not of the Lord.
right,
And
because
I wasn't,
how many places in the Bible he said, do not be afraid, right? Do
do
not
not
be
be
afraid.
afraid.
Mm.
So I remember thinking, feeling nervous, a
Mm.
little excited,
Okay.
because I thought that meant, in my mind, that meant that my coaching was coming back, and I missed it. I missed coaching. I was able to counsel. I was considered, a health counselor, a nutrition counselor. But when you have a revolving door and you've got people in there for 15 minutes and that's it, and that's too long, you're in there too long if it's 15 minutes. It was just crazy because that's not how I operate. I pour into people.
Mhm.
And so I didn't like that. And it was very mentally draining and emotionally draining because they would start to share and then I'd get a knock on the door like, hurry up, hurry up.
Next
And
person.
then you feel, you just feel like you're not serving them the best way. So I knew that I wanted to coach. I absolutely did not want to let my business go. Actually, to go even further back, when I was trying to come up with my name, when I first got, my business started, I just felt that sense again that it should be called Treasured Wellness because I wanted women to treasure their wellness, to treat their body as a temple of the Holy Spirit. So, yeah, so I guess that's another time where I've just had this impression, I guess,
Yes.
that he was telling me these things. And then when he said to teach my people, I had actually lost 5 podcast recordings. I hadn't quit work yet. And I had recorded 5, like after work, I'm working on the podcast, I'm staying up too late doing stuff. You know how that is because I was excited about it. Like this was something I was working towards that, was going
Yes.
to be very even more fulfilling. And so I came home one day from work and I'm looking for these episodes because I'm about ready to launch it. And they're gone.
Dear.
They're like gone. 5 of them are gone. I have the first 2, but then 5 are gone. And I'm like, what? And so I was like devastated. And I'm talking to the Lord and I realized I had been kind of on the fence a little bit. I knew I wanted to pray at the end of all of my episodes. I knew that I wanted to speak to Christian women, but I was feeling because I had, just I was starting to have these feelings of guilt, things that the enemy will put in to our minds. And so I was like, Lord, should I not just niche down just to Christian women? Should I speak to everybody? And then if so, how does that work?
Right.
Because I'm going to talk about Jesus, and it's just, I just can't
I love
not.
Jesus is not going to be off my show.
So it was really funny. It was almost like take these episodes away because I had recorded them probably straddling the fence a little bit more
Oh,
than he wanted me to. So to
there you
me,
go. That was a sign.
it was a sign. And I felt like that night after I was done crying, I just felt like he had said, I'm like, Lord, does this mean you want me to? Because I had to re-record them. So I'm like, do you want me just to go all in on Christian women? And I literally felt teach my
Wow.
people.
Thank you for sharing that. Just so moving.
Gonna
So,
get me crying.
yeah, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I am sure if as you're listening to this, you can so appreciate the sharing. And this is so important for us to realize that we're not alone, that sometimes God does speak in our hearts. And when we get these moments of confirmation, they could be so helpful and life-giving. So thank you for sharing that. That's so
Sure.
good. Wow. And I'm curious with all this, you've shared, and I would love to hear how you're bringing this in. I know you mentioned the podcast and the coaching right now, right? And just a quick question about if you're listening, you might know all things about gluten, but if you don't, like what are some foods that contain gluten that might be good to avoid if someone might want to test it, if this is bringing some of the symptoms out? Like what are some of the no-no foods they do contain, they're high in gluten?
That's a great question because gluten is in a lot.
Right.
It's yeah, it's in a lot. I mean, it's in
Grains,
wheat, barley,
right?
and rye,
And all
you
the
know,
grains, right?
the grains. Yeah, wheat, barley, rye. Rice technically does not have gluten, but there's a lot of cross-contamination that goes on with rice. Um, you know, any box mix of anything, unless it says gluten-free, that's going to have wheat flour in it, which is gluten. And so you've got your wheat flour, your white flour, your rye, your barley, it's all gluten. So
Nice. So
then
bread, cookies, anything
yes,
processed, cereals, right?
cereal, yep, cereal, Rice Krispies was one that back in the day with our daughter, she would eat Rice Krispies because it was just rice.
You would think
And
so.
so
Yeah,
and so that was okay. But yeah, like
was good. Okay,
and
Rice Krispie were good. Okay.
Rice Krispies were, I mean, it's all air. I mean, there's no nutrition in those. But at the time, that was like, the thing is, we need to make the best choice with what we have
Yes.
in the situation that we're in. But if you are really trying to avoid gluten, it's in everything. And I actually go through that with my coaching clients because it's hidden in so many things. Like it's in soy sauce, for example. There's gluten in soy sauce.
Wow.
So a simple switch would be tamari. So if you switch from soy sauce to tamari, you won't have the gluten. Or
Wow.
coconut aminos, is an option that you could have as well.
Mhm.
So it's in barbecue sauce. It's in oh my goodness, so many things. If you're thinking processed, jarred specialty sauces,
Okay.
look for that if it says wheat flour. But yeah, all of the processed foods that are anything with any flour, chances are it's going to be gluten involved. And I know that there are some brands that are now they're a lot more brands out there that have gluten-free options. Simple Mills, I think, is one of them. There's a few others, Bob's Red Mill, but you know, they also can have a bunch of garbage in them because it's still processed foods.
Right, right.
So processed foods, I say if it's gonna rot, eat it because God created that. But if it can sit on a shelf for 3 years, don't eat it.
Right, right. That's so good, right? If he God created it, it's gonna be healthy because God has a plan.
He's
Absolutely.
got a plan.
Well,
He
thank you.
wants us to be well.
Yes. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And if you're interested to, as a listener, to get more details, just make sure you back off and re-listen to all the details that Michelle shared. Thank you, Michelle, for that. And so tell us, what are you doing now? Tell us about a coaching program. What are projects that you're having? What's going on with your on the podcast?
Yeah. So the podcast is going great. It's in its third year, Treasured Wellness. I'm having a blast with that. And I love it so much. It's just so much fun. And I know that you love doing your podcast too. So I've got that on anywhere you listen to podcasts, but also on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel, same name, Treasured Wellness. And yeah, I'm just really taking this time to pour into my clients because it lights me up so much. Like I get like invigorated after a session because I'm seeing how God is working in their lives and in their hearts and in their minds, and how they are truly getting the transformation because they're putting Him first through it all. See,
Mhm.
so many women think that God doesn't care about the details of their health. They just feel like He doesn't care. But, I have this biblical approach to healing, to restoration, body, soul, spirit. We're all connected, and we are a spirit, we live in a body, and we have a soul. And so we can't ignore those pieces of ourselves. We can't just compartmentalize. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, but also diving deeper. Let's dive deeper. Maybe we need to go deeper to identify what your root cause is of your fatigue, what your root cause is of your joint pain, what is keeping you sad, sick, and stuck in your whole health, right? We have to identify that. We have to go deeper. And sometimes that involves more in specific targeted testing, whether that's through blood, saliva, or urine. We
Kind of
need
like
to
functional testings.
correct, right? Because we don't want to guess. We don't want to keep throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And honestly, I'm very passionate about that because of what had happened with our daughter, because I felt like that's what was happening. She was being put on medication that she didn't need, anti-seizure medicine, cancer drugs that she did not need because they were guessing. And okay, all of that aside, I don't want to continue to carry that on into what I do now. I'd much rather we have an idea, but that doesn't mean we overtest, because that's important too. Because sometimes functional practitioners like to overtest. You need this, you need this, you need this. No, let's see how just following an anti-inflammatory nutrition protocol, moving our body, working on stress perception, having this biblical mindset protocol, let's see, using the ABCs, I call it the ABCs of fatigue recovery with targeted supplementation. Let's see, and then we can test, if after a few weeks things are not changing. Or because a lot of my clients will bring me their lab work so that we'll do a lab review for right off the bat.
Mhm.
And then we can get started because we've got that. If you haven't had labs for a year, we're going to have to do that.
You're talking
But a lot
about
of
regular
people are.
labs.
Yes, yes, regular blood labs.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, I'm putting my functional eye on that. So conventional ranges are so broad with the laboratory testing. They're very broad, whereas functional, they bring it down into more what's reasonable for a healthy person.
Right.
And so it's much better. You can be 2/3 of the way sick before a diagnosis is made.
Before the
We
lab
don't.
is might show up, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't want that. So there
Works.
are these little uh glimmers that pop out at me for lab ranges, and it, especially if you're comparing them to the year prior, if things are changing and they're getting worse, we
Mhm.
don't, but they're still in the normal range, something's not right.
Got it. Yeah.
So that's why we can hit it head on.
That makes total sense. And do you have any nuggets of either how to prevent fatigue, chronic fatigue, or signs to look when it's happening? And what are some tips to take away around fatigue, either to prevent or kind of handle it?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I want to say that focusing only on your physical symptoms, it's not going to bring you the restoration that you are needing and wanting.
Same
And I
old.
say that because your body wants to feel safe and secure. It wants to, it really needs to for healing and restoration to happen. And, we're healing from the inside out, we're restoring from the inside out. And so rest brings your body into a state of balance, into that ability to repair. And this is helpful for the brain and the body as
Right.
well. So it's not just physical rest. So I have a protocol that I, share and I talk about on the podcast. It's a rest protocol. So it's not just that physical rest. There's so much more involved in that. We have spiritual, mental, emotional, sensory rest. I mean, there's so many other ways that we need to rest than just laying down. And I really believe that a life lived without rest is an underlived life. We're
Yeah.
missing out. We're missing out when we don't seek this part. So be in tune with your body's cues. Absolutely. If you are experiencing things that just are ongoing, it's not your typical, I stayed up late watching the hockey game, or I'm a new mom and I'm sleep deprived. If it's not, if something's not right, it. Trust yourself.
Right. And it's not
Trust your
triggered by
God-given
the
instinct.
event. Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. And so, with that, like if you're having, heart palpitations or your hair starting to fall out more so than it normally did, or, you're tired but wired and you go to bed at a normal time, but your mind won't shut off. I mean, these are all symptoms that your body is trying to tell you something. And so that kind of leads into self-care. Self-care is not selfish, it's actually very biblical.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Jesus modeled everything for us, and he modeled self-care for us.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you name all this because that's exactly my larger framework and approach. That rest, I call it renewal, that renewal is not just self-care. And yes, we do need to sleep, but we need to also take care of the needs of our mind. We need to take care of our
Yes,
needs of our emotions and spiritual needs. And when the renewal is kind of synchronized on all these levels, then true regeneration happens. And it doesn't have to be only in the weekends or vacation or going on retreat. We need to do this on a daily basis. And I think that's what you and I were so aligned in that sense that there is that it's more than just what the typical, in our culture, we're thinking in terms of self-care and renewal. It just has to be fully aligned. And I love what your focus is in as you do that. It brings the body, like I love that, to look at functional labs, right? And then see what supplements might be needed or what else can be compensating in such a way that the alignment happens from the body, from inside out. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
absolutely. Yeah, it's so critical. It's a critical piece that's missing because we often think about the physical, but there's so much more. I mean, tired is not just physical.
Right. And I've been hearing, like, I just had a retreat not too long ago, and that was a question. Even if people have time and they want to rest, the mind is going. The mind is going. And the only way to disconnect is almost like through distraction, social media, Facebook, news. The problem with that is that we are actually giving more information. We're loading the brain with more information. So here is the brain trying to sort through lots of knowledge and information and get some rest and just solidify. And then boom, yes, we're shifting the focus, but all of a sudden there's another load. of information, sometimes emotions, from
Yeah.
whatever we're seeing. And all of a sudden, what seems to be relaxing initially can actually continue this wheel, the cycle of thoughts into the mind. And I hear so many people that are falling asleep. They have to fall asleep looking on the phone, social media. Otherwise, their mind keeps going and going. And that's not the state.
Right.
And there's another,
No.
if you're listening to this, there is hope. Just pause and re-listen to this conversation because there is hope and there's a different way to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, it's so funny that you said that because one of my clients is actually doing a social media fast right now. And she is doing amazing in all other areas of her life and her health because she doesn't have that constant onslaught, of
Yes.
information. And it's what I call sensory fatigue. you
Yes,
know we
exactly.
get sensory overload, and I've seen it in my own husband. And so I just like gently like kind of explain that to him, like, hey, let's take a little break from the phone.
Right, right. And then we transmit all that thoughts and emotion inside of our universe, and then we think it's ours. So here's a quick tip if you're listening that because I got this question over the weekend, what do we do instead? You can just allow even silence for 5, 10 minutes and just allow the thoughts which are swirling to kind of settle without hopping on the content of the thoughts, but just observe them. And they usually settle like sand in the water. So I'm curious, what's your take on this and what are your suggestions around this topic? Because it is common. I think we live in
It's
such a
so common.
society that stimulates us, puts us on a sympathetic drive at all times. Our mind is
Yeah.
constantly busy. And on top of that, our emotions can we worry, and then the thoughts are trying to resolve this. So what are some of your tips?
Yeah, no, that's really good because it leads to burnout. I mean, it
Yeah, yeah,
literally over time with everything else that you've got going on, it can lead to your burnout. And so you're numbing out by scrolling. You're numbing out by doing that. And instead, what I suggest, first of all, I suggest never having your phone next to your head when you sleep. It is not healthy for you, and it's also a temptation.
right.
And
And
so
yes, and maybe if you're worried about your kids, you can put it on Do Not Disturb and just let your kids go through you. But yes, not having, what do you I'm usually suggesting an hour or two before going to bed to kind of disconnect from social media. Um,
yes, definitely an hour. They used to say 2 hours, but an hour would be great. Sometimes we start with 30 minutes. You start where you can. Move your phone away from you, like put it across the room. So it's, at least because I understand I have adult kids too. And so I understand that need to, if your kids need you or something. So it's not necessarily keep it out of the room, but just don't have it right by your head, because then the temptation also, if you're using it as an alarm, is to hit snooze. So then you're having a hard time getting up in the morning. So not only is your sleep disrupted because you're scrolling at night, but or you wake up in the middle of the night, can't fall back asleep, so you grab your phone
yeah,
and you
let's
start
just scroll a
scrolling.
little bit. Let's find out who else emailed me or got text.
Who
Yes.
else is up at 2 a.m.?
Oh,
There's a reason
I've,
why.
I've never done that. I'm kidding. Guilty, right? Yes.
So but it keeps your brain alert, it keeps your brain awake, and then it is much harder to fall back asleep. It's like the woman that says, I need to drink wine to fall asleep. It will help you fall asleep maybe quicker in the interim, but then you'll wake up in the middle of the night and then your mind will be. So we have to gently do what I call like creating a calming bedtime routine. We have to do that because an hour from your time you want to hit the pillow, no cell phones, no TV, no checking emails, none of that. Go in the bathroom, do a nice little TLC routine for yourself, whether that's, giving yourself extra care as you're washing your face, taking a bath, taking a shower, drinking a mug of herbal tea. You want to create a state that your brain and your body is in communication. It's time to rest.
Right.
It's time for us to be still. And over time, this is not a quick fix. There is no easy button, but over time, your body will get the messaging clearer because it's not distracted. It's not full of jumble. It's not a squirrel's nest. and you'll be able to fall asleep and then stay asleep better. Or if you get up to use the bathroom, you'll be able to fall back asleep much faster.
And obviously, as a listener, if there are sleep conditions and whatnot, which is are possible, then obviously stay in communication with your doctor. But yeah, in medicine, we say that it's sleep hygiene, right? There's a certain sense, and we don't exercise right before we go to bed heavily. There's certain things
Right.
that activate that nervous system that keeps us alert. So anything that you can connect and calm and
And
wow.
some supplements will help with that. I mean, there's a lot of supplements that, not necessarily sleep labeled, but they're for sleep because your body is low in that. So if when we discover that your body is low in a certain mineral and then you start giving it that mineral, it starts helping with sleep.
That's wonderful. Wow, such a rich conversation. I think we can stay together and talk for another 2 hours here.
I think so.
I know we'll have to wrap it up, but before we do that, are there any other nuggets of wisdom that you like to share in terms of renewal and anything around that topic, regeneration?
I just want your listeners to really grasp that you are your own best advocate for your health.
Mm,
You are. God has given you such a beautiful gift in creating you as a woman. And as the woman, you are the heartbeat of your home. And so everything that you do trickles down into the family unit, whether you have kids still at home or not. And people are watching and people, hear things that we say in passing. They're seeing what we have in our hand. There's just watching, right? And so you can be such an impactor on not only your family, but everybody else. So just start small, make one simple change and build on that. Don't think you have to do everything all at once. That's overwhelming. But start with the thought that I am my own best advocate for my health and take control of your health because God's given you such an amazing gift with the Holy Spirit.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. And that's exactly how what I'm teaching, taking small steps. You're busy already. You're busy giving. You're busy supporting in your vocation, in your family, at church. Do small steps so we don't get a backlash. When we try to strive too much, that's only going to bring more chronic stress. So yeah, take small steps. I'm so excited to be so resonant with the message. And I hope you as a listener really benefited from Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, for being here today. It's such a beautiful conversation, and hopefully we're going to do more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Yes, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the wealth of information and your wisdom and your practice and everything, all the resources you're sharing with the listener. I'm so grateful for everything you're doing, and your story was so moving. So thank you for that. I'm sure I was moved and inspired. I'm sure the listeners are going to be moved and inspired by what you're doing. And I want to, as a listener, to really thank you for being here. I don't take your attention for granted. I say this often, but what is our attention span in anything on social media or on podcast or YouTube? About a few seconds, or it might last for 10, 20 minutes. But to be here at the end of the interview, I want to commend you. I know you love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. And I'm so appreciative of what you do. And I hope this blesses you. I hope you get encouragement every week that there is hope. There is hope for change. There is hope to be aligned and live in a healthy body, with a healthy mind and healthy emotions, and in our beautiful soul that is in union with God already. So thank you for all you do. And I'm going to end with a prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for Michelle. I lift her up and everything that she's doing. May you bless her and bless her family and people that she serves and her community and her vocation. And I also want to lift up the listener. May she be blessed abundantly. May you bless and send a covering over the listener around her needs, around her vocation and work and family and church community in such a way that she can be inspired to give, inspired to serve like you, Christ, and at the same time to be able to love her neighbor like herself, meaning find ways to take care of the earthly vessel to bring you glory so that she can bring your light into the world. Thank you, God. And I thank you for being here. I love to do the sign of the cross in my Christian Orthodox faith, we do that. And I know Catholics also have the sign of the cross. I just love that. It's such a beautiful reminder for me. However else you celebrate Christ and God, I want to invite you to have a wonderful and lovely Friday and just the rest of the weekend. And if you have any questions or comments, do email me at connectedteamforthesoul. I love hearing from you when you have thoughts and inspirations, and you can also put in the chat in the YouTube if you have any questions or comments. And until next time, I say goodbye for now. Take care.